Hi everyone, Mr. H here. This is chapter 1.2, Types of Organizations. In this video, we will explore the different types of businesses known as profit-based or for-profit organizations, and we will also talk a little bit about the non-profit ones. So let's get started. Profit-based organizations can be classified into four big groups. We will first take a quick look at these four types. Number one, they can be sole traders. Sole traders are also known as sole proprietors, and they are businesses with only one single owner. Even though they might hire additional employees, still there will be only one owner for this type of business. The following type is partnerships. Partnerships are this type of business with two or more owners called partners. Each partner owns a percentage of the business, and partners both own and run the business usually, with the only exception of sleeping partners. There might be one or two partners in the organization who do provide finance, okay, to the business, but they do not participate directly in the running of the business. They do not take part in the business activity. The third type is companies or corporations. They are very similar to partnerships. They do have two or more owners who own a specific percentage of the business, but in the form of shares. This is why they are called shareholders. Another attribute is that shareholders are separated from the business, which means they do own the business, but they do not participate directly. They are not directly involved with the business activity. They just own it and get the dividends. Companies can also be subdivided into private limited companies or public limited companies, depending on the way they handle their shares. If they hold their shares privately, they are private limited companies. If they put their shares in the stock market, like in Wall Street, then they are public limited companies. The last type is for-profit social enterprises. Like the other three, these organizations have an aim of making money, of making profit, but they have a social aim as priority. Okay? The three specific for-profit social enterprises we will be exploring in a minute are cooperatives, microfinanciers, and public-private partnerships. So these are the big four types of businesses, or the big four types of profit-based organizations. In the following slide, I will share additional information about each of them. Let's go. So talking about the sole trader, the partnership, and the companies. We already discussed the differences in terms of ownership. Sole trader is only one. Partnership has partners who have a percentage of ownership. The shareholders also own a percentage of the business, but they own it, but they don't run the business directly. In terms of decision making, the sole trader is the one having the last word. He's the one making the decisions. In terms of partnerships, the partners have to meet and vote, and then they make the decisions together. And with shareholders in companies, they mostly delegate all the decision making to the CEO and the other managers. Now, in terms of liability, this is in terms of responding financially and legally when something goes wrong in the business. Sole traders and partners have unlimited liability. This means that they do have to respond legally and financially to whatever happens in the business. This is different to shareholders. Shareholders have limited liability, which means that they do not have to respond financially or legally for anything that happens in the business. If the business goes wrong, it is the business itself and the CEO and the managers who have to respond for what happens, and not the shareholders. Okay? This is why we say they have limited liability. In terms of finance, sole traders, this is just one person. So this one person might only have limited finance, probably just savings or a few other sources. And because it is also just one person, they might have limited access to all the possible sources of finance. If in a partnership, this is quite different because, well, there's more people, so there would be more capital available. And remember, there are also sleeping partners who, even though they wouldn't participate directly in the business activity, they will still provide finance to the business. Then we have companies. In terms of finance, well, these are larger organizations, so they have greater capital. Remember that when they start, there is an initial offering of shares, so every shareholder provides a specific capital, okay, to the business. And because there is more capital, there is more money involved, they will have improved chances to access to all of these sources of finance. Now, in terms of relationship with the customer, sole traders have a greater chance of developing a more individual or more personalized relationship with them, especially because they are usually smaller businesses and therefore they have a closer approach. Partnerships are also similar. They can also develop personalized or individual relationships, but since there are more people involved, there are greater chances of developing or providing more varied services. Companies or corporations are different. We already said that shareholders do not run the business, they just own it. Therefore, they don't actually relate with the customers in any way. However, companies usually have a sales force or a customer service department or a customer support department that would listen to the customer's needs or concerns or doubts. In terms of accountability, in terms of legal requirements, sole traders have limited accountability. This means that they only have to respond directly to the government in terms of records, in terms of taxes. So there's a higher privacy. Partnerships are different because they have a shared document to start the business called the deed of partnership with all the specifications and functions of the partners and how the profit will be distributed, the percentage that corresponds to each of them. So all of these specific details must be legally set up before the business actually starts. And then they have meetings where they make additional decisions or even modifications to that deed of partnership if necessary. Companies, because they handle larger capitals, they are bigger companies, everything is legally recorded. There are these opening documents called the Memorandum of Association and Articles of Association that set up all the specific conditions and all the specific functions and how much of the shares correspond to each of the shareholders and all those details. There is obviously a higher degree of accountability, and therefore there will be audits being held in the business to check that everything is going okay, and there will be reports periodically given to the shareholders so they can tell that everything is going right. Finally, in terms of setup and stability, well, the sole trader has less chances for stability than the other two, especially because this is a smaller business with limited finance. But setting up a sole trader, for a sole trader to set up a business is easier, mostly inexpensive, and is very quick to set up. Partnerships, they start with a deed of partnership, and that's the first step to set it up. And because there is more capital available, they have more chances of stability. And finally, well, companies, they are bigger organizations, so setting them up takes longer and it might be more expensive, but there is a greater chance for stability and for continuity and expansion. Okay, now let's talk about for-profit social enterprises. We already said that these are organizations that do want to make profit, but they have a social component, a social aim. Number one was cooperatives, and like they are very similar to partnerships, but they have more than 20 members, usually 20, 30, 50, 100 members. These the members of a cooperative, they usually share a specific interest or a specific skill or a specific business activity. So there can be financial cooperatives or housing cooperatives or workers cooperatives, producer cooperatives or consumer cooperatives, for example. It can be a group of farmers that grow rice, for example, together, and all of them decide to join up forces to benefit each other, and so sell their product to the market and benefit each other. So this is what cooperatives do. The other type is microfinanciers that are like banks, but smaller banks that can provide smaller amounts of money at very low interest rates. So this is the way they actually help people in need that would not have easy access to regular banks for money. And then these microfinancers provide specific help to these people with small amounts of money at low interest rates. Finally, we have public-private partnerships or PPPs, and this is an agreement between a private sector business and the public sector. It is, for example, the government wanting to build a hospital and then agreeing with a private construction company. So the public sector provides the finance, provides the money to build the hospital, and this construction company builds the hospital. So this agreement between a regular private business and the public sector for a specific project, these are public-private partnerships. They have a social aim. So these are all of these 6 types explained. Now finally, let's go to non-profit social enterprises. Non-profit social enterprises do raise money. They do get donations, so they do handle money, but we don't talk about profit here. We talk about surplus. Okay, so that money they collect and that money that is left after all the operations they do is not called profit, is called surplus. Basically, NPOs are private organizations with a social purpose, not a profit purpose. They are foundations, fundraisers, churches, pressure groups like labor unions, protest and action groups, or political parties. 2 important categories of NPOs are non-governmental organizations or NGOs and charities. So talking about the first, NGOs, they are organizations that support a socially desirable cause. That means that they support a social cause like human rights, for example, or political causes or cultural causes. They are concerned with one specific issue sometimes, or sometimes they are concerned with a broader spectrum, like, for example, Greenpeace, environmental issues. And charities are this specific type of NGOs that provide relief for those in need, for example, situations of poverty or after a disaster, and people who are unable to help themselves. So they are moved by a philanthropy objective. They want to help people that are going through a specific hardship or difficulty, and then they provide that help. It can be a single event after, for example, a natural disaster, or it can be focused on a single issue on a longer term. Okay, so there they are, NGOs and charities. And so this is all I wanted to share with you in this video. That's it, and bye bye.